I still remember the sound of my heels clicking on the gymnasium floor, the echo drowned out by applause meant for someone else. My name had just been called. Valedictorian. 4 years of sacrifice, no skip days, no parties. And yet, the loudest cheer erupted not for me, but for my brother receiving a brand new car, as a surprise gift. I smiled. I waved. I died a little inside. That night, I scrolled through dozens of photos. Every single shot had him. Center stage. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something inside me whispered, this silence they gave me. I won't wear it forever. The sun was brutal that day, baking the rows of plastic chairs lined up beneath white canopies. I adjusted my cap, my fingers trembling slightly. Not from nerves about the speech I had just delivered, but from anticipation. This was my moment. My name had been etched onto the dean's list every semester. I had tutored failing classmates, volunteered at the clinic, and sacrificed every social distraction to earn that stage. Today I was more than just Samantha. I was valedictorian, scholarship recipient, future biologist. Surely they would see me now. As I walked off stage, the audience was still clapping. But something shifted. A cheer louder than mine broke through the crowd. I turned, confused. Lucas was walking toward the parking lot, led by my father. My mother pulled a black cloth off a shiny silver sedan, parked near the entrance, beaming like she had just given birth again. "Surprise!" someone shouted. Balloons were released. Applause erupted. Not for my GPA, not for my speech, but for Lucas and his brand new car. I blinked, unsure if I was missing something. Had I walked into the wrong reality? I looked toward my parents. My mother waved at Lucas. My father gave him the keys. No one looked at me. Not once. So I smiled. I posed for photos. I laughed when prompted. I stood beside Lucas while everyone congratulated him for... what, exactly? Existing? That night I sat on the edge of my dorm bed scrolling through Instagram. The family post read, "So proud of our boy Lucas. He's had a tough year, but he's pushing through. Hope this car keeps him motivated." Not a word about me. Not even a, "Congrats, Sam." Someone had taken a photo of me at graduation, alone, holding my diploma, eyes off camera. The caption, "When you're just the sibling." It had been reposted, shared, laughed at. I became a meme overnight, the girl who graduated with honors but still couldn't beat her brother's mediocrity. The next morning I checked my inbox. Nothing. Not a text, not a message, not a, "We're proud of you." Just silence. Silence and screenshots. The ache was slow, like frostbite creeping under the skin. I walked to the garage later that week, an old habit. As a child, it was the only place I could cry without someone asking what was wrong. Dust covered everything, but the smell was familiar. I found a rusted box near the old tool shelf, the kind of container you forget until it surprises you with memories. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed but never delivered. I had written these. "Dear Mom, today I won the science fair, but I guess you were too busy helping Lucas with his history project. Dear Dad, I got an A+ on my math final. You said Lucas was struggling and needed more attention. I get it. Dear both, I miss when we were a family." I read them all, one by one. Every word was a fragment of a girl who used to believe that being good meant being seen. I remembered once in 9th grade when I failed a quiz because I was sick, but still went to class. My mother had looked at my paper, sighed, and said, "Are you sure this isn't about jealousy? You've been quiet lately. Is it because Lucas got picked for the basketball team?" I wasn't jealous. I was tired. Tired of being the emotional janitor of a house that never gave me space to break. Sometimes I wonder if being called the easy child, was just their way of excusing their neglect. She's fine. She's strong. She doesn't need much. But what if I did? What if I needed them to notice the way I always offered to do the dishes? The way I never asked for anything? The way I smiled even when they forgot my birthday? I wasn't strong. I was surviving. The truth hit me with a weight I hadn't been ready for. Maybe I'd been cast as a background character in a family drama I didn't write, but kept performing in. For harmony, for love, for a seat at the table. Now, I wasn't sure I wanted the seat anymore. I folded one of the letters, the one where I wrote, "Do you even like me? Or just tolerate me?" and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but holding it felt like something, like an anchor, like a reminder that I wasn't crazy or dramatic or ungrateful. I was just unseen. And something in me was starting to open its eyes. The weeks after graduation stretched like fog, heavy, endless, directionless. I picked up 2 jobs, one at a local lab sorting blood samples, another as a weekend server at a cafe where no one knew my name, unless it was printed on the receipt. I kept busy. Productivity felt like a shield. If I was always moving, always achieving, then maybe I wouldn't feel the hollowness pressing against my ribs. I checked in with my family, only through occasional texts, always initiated by me, always met with dry responses. "How's work?" Or, "Lucas might move out soon." Never, "How are you holding up?" Or, "We saw your graduation photos." They didn't even know I'd started a research internship I'd worked months to secure. Or maybe they knew and just didn't think it was worth mentioning. One night, over takeout and cold tea, my best friend Mira stared at me for too long. "You look like someone trying to disappear while screaming at the same time," she said. I laughed, but it came out brittle. "I'm just tired." "No, Sam, you're not just tired. You're exhausted from performing. Tell me, are you doing all this for you? Or are you still hoping they'll finally look up and see you?" I didn't answer, because maybe I didn't know anymore. The next morning, during a lull at the lab, I received an auto-generated email from the university's financial aid office. A list of internal scholarships had been awarded, and my name wasn't on it. Strange. I had applied for the Blanchard Research Fund, one given specifically to top graduates continuing in STEM. I had been told I was shortlisted. Curious, I emailed the department head. He responded within minutes. "Hi, Samantha. You were indeed a top candidate. However, your father reached out last month and formally declined the nomination on your behalf, citing that your brother may be applying next year and would need the support more urgently. We assumed it was your mutual decision. I apologize if there was miscommunication." The words blurred. I read them 5 times. Each time slower, colder. I hadn't declined anything. I hadn't even known I was being considered. My father, without asking, without telling me, had chosen to pass over the opportunity. Not for my sake, for Lucas. I sat frozen, the cursor blinking on my reply box. A part of me wanted to scream, to send an email so sharp it could slice through their ignorance. I began typing. "To whom it may concern, I am writing to formally report a violation of my academic autonomy. I was removed from scholarship consideration without my consent." But then I stopped. The anger boiled just below my skin, but beneath it was something worse. Numbness. I saved the draft, stared at it, and never hit send. That night, the silence cracked. I woke up gasping for air, my chest tight, my fingers numb. The room spun. I crawled to the corner of the bed and gripped the frame like it was the only thing keeping me from falling through the floor. I thought it was a heart attack. My body was screaming. But my mind whispered finally, "This is what it feels like when the heart gives up pretending." The ER doctor called it a panic attack. The therapist I saw later called it something else. Emotional abandonment trauma. She explained it in soft terms, like I was a child learning what the word hurt meant for the first time. "You've been living under the illusion that if you just give enough, love enough, achieve enough, they'll see you," she said gently. "But their blindness isn't your fault." I nodded. But the guilt was louder than logic. That weekend I pulled out the dusty family photo albums my mom had forced into my moving boxes. I hadn't opened them in years. Page after page showed birthdays, Christmas mornings, vacations. Lucas grinning, Lucas surrounded by wrapping paper, Lucas blowing candles. And me? 3 photos. One of me at 6, covered in cake icing. One of me blurry in the background at a beach. One school picture crooked and unlabeled. 3 in 18 years. I closed the album slowly, holding it to my chest like it might pulse with warmth if I just pressed hard enough. It didn't. If I disappeared tomorrow, who would notice first? Would anyone check my room, my voicemail? Or would I just become another framed photo that never got added? I couldn't answer that. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, the hum dull against the roar in my chest. I didn't cry. Not because I was brave, but because the ache was too deep for tears now. My phone buzzed. A new number, no contact photo. Just a message. "Do you want to know the truth your mother never told you?" I read it 3 times. Then again. The ceiling fan word. I didn't respond. Yet, the message sat unread for 2 days before curiosity finally caved in. I replied with 1 word. "Who?" The response came almost instantly. "Diane. I used to be your mother's best friend. We haven't spoken in years. But I was there. Back when everything changed." She offered to meet in a quiet cafe downtown. Something in her tone felt different. Not invasive, not pitying, just familiar. I agreed, half expecting some scam or misdirection. But when I saw her, gray streaks in her dark hair, gentle eyes, a folder in hand, I knew she had come not to talk about me, but to hand me back the pieces no one else ever mentioned. "I'm not here to speak badly about your family," Diane said. "But I think you deserve to know that what happened to you wasn't your fault." I didn't speak. I just listened. "Your mother had you early," she continued. "Too early. She wasn't ready. Your father was planning to leave her. He packed his bags 2 days before you were born. She had a breakdown. It was ugly. It was quiet. And when you survived the birth instead of joy, there was fear. Fear that you had tied them together forever. You became the reason they stayed. And she resented that." I stared at her, every breath tight. "She never told you," Diane said. "But I saw it. I saw her try. But I also saw her drown. A twist I never imagined. I wasn't invisible because I was weak or flawed. I was invisible because I had arrived at the wrong time, in the wrong storm, and became the weight they never learned to carry. I started therapy the next day. The sessions were awkward at first. I talked about surface things, grades, work, silence. But then, when I felt the tremor in my voice while recounting how they clapped louder for Lucas's car than for my diploma, the therapist said, "What would you say to the 5-year-old you watching from the corner?" I didn't answer that day. Later that night, I wrote a letter. I addressed it to little me. "I'm sorry I told you to be quiet. I'm sorry I taught you to perform. You didn't need to earn their love. You were worthy the moment you were born. I wrote pages. The more I wrote, the more I wept. The more I wept, the more I began to breathe differently, like I was finally allowed to inhale. A week later, I got an email from a psychology podcast called Family Unfiltered. One of their producers had read my anonymous blog. "Would you be willing to speak about your experience with family favoritism?" it asked. "Your story could help others feel less alone." I hesitated, then said yes. I sat in a studio with headphones too big for my head and a microphone that made my voice sound like it belonged to someone who had things to say. I told my story. Not the whole of it, but enough. Enough to feel heard, enough to make space. 3 days after the episode aired, it went semi-viral. The comment that stuck with me read, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you." But another comment chilled me. It was a username I recognized. My brother, Lucas. He hadn't commented, but he had liked the episode. 2 weeks later, I launched my own podcast, The Other Child. It was raw, messy, imperfect, just like the emotions I'd buried for decades. I spoke not only for myself but invited guests who shared similar experiences. Siblings passed over, children turned caregivers, invisible daughters. Emails started pouring in. "Your voice is the one I never had. I cried listening to you. Thank you for speaking for us. My mother treats me like I'm just there. You made me feel seen." I printed them out. I kept them in a folder titled Proof. Not to feed my ego, but to remind myself I mattered. One night, a donation came through the site. Anonymous, the note read. "For the one who never asked for a spotlight but built her own anyway." The email used a burner address, but I recognized the phrasing. Lucas. I didn't know what to make of it. Guilt? Support? Both. I didn't respond. I just filed it in Proof. On a slow afternoon, I walked to the city park and sat under a tree with a letter in hand from a 13-year-old girl in Arizona. "I've been the other child since I was 5, she wrote. "My dad calls me the easy one. Your voice makes me feel brave." I read it twice, and then I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time my pain had purpose. That evening, as golden light slipped through my window blinds, my phone buzzed with a notification I hadn't seen in over a year. A message from my mother. "Are you free for dinner sometime this week?" I stared at the screen, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to respond right away. The house smelled the same, lemon cleaner and faint cinnamon, like it had tried too hard to stay familiar. I stepped into the kitchen and saw the dining table set just like it used to be. Mismatched plates, folded paper napkins, candles that had clearly been lit and blown out multiple times. It was all too preserved, like a museum exhibit titled Family Functioning. My mother stood at the stove, stirring something that didn't sizzle. Lucas leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward me, and then away again. My father wasn't home yet. "He'll join us soon," Mom said without looking up. "He's working late." Dinner was served. Roasted chicken, overcooked carrots, dry rice. I chewed slowly. No one spoke. Forks tapped porcelain in rhythm. I was halfway through a bite when my mother reached under her seat and pulled out a plastic bag. "I kept this," she said, "from when you were 5. She placed it on the table, then slid it toward me. Inside was a tiny red dress, slightly stained with what looked like orange juice and mud. I recognized it instantly. My first day of kindergarten dress. It still had the small flower-shaped button I used to fidget with when I was nervous. "There's something inside," she added. I unfolded the dress and found a yellowed envelope tucked in the hem, sealed but brittle. I opened it carefully, the paper cracking at the corners. The letter was short, handwritten, uneven. I don't know how to love her. She terrifies me. She needs more than I have. And I'm afraid. I'll fail her. There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting. It was my mother's. I didn't say anything. I folded the letter back, laid it on the table, and pushed my plate away. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just tired of chasing crumbs of connection from people who barely acknowledged I was hungry. I didn't know she kept that, Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him for the first time that night. She was scared, Sam, he said. After everything. The early birth, the fights with Dad. They were both barely holding it together. I was 5, I replied. I didn't need them to be perfect. I just needed them to look at me. Lucas swallowed hard. I know. A pause. He stared at his lap. I thought you were the lucky one, he continued. You were so quiet, so smart. They didn't expect you to mess up. I was the one under pressure. I had to keep them proud. That car? I didn't ask for it. They said I needed something to stay on track. I didn't even want it. I blinked. The air in the room shifted, just slightly. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I thought if I said it out loud, I'd break. And I didn't think anyone would notice. The candles flickered. My mother suddenly clutched her chest, fingers trembling. Her face went pale, eyes wide. Mom? Lucas leapt up. She gasped, hand pressing harder. I can't. I called the ambulance. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens, clipped voices, sterile lights. Lucas sat beside me in the waiting room, head in hands. I sat still, not out of control, but from a strange calm that had settled deep in my spine. When they finally let me in, my mother lay on the hospital bed, oxygen tube under her nose, monitors beeping in gentle rhythm. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked at me. Not Lucas. Me. Sam, she murmured. You came. I took her hand. Yeah, I did. And in that moment, I wasn't her daughter out of obligation. I was just someone who had forgiven her quietly, over time, for everything she never knew she'd done. Later, when they transferred her to recovery, I stepped outside for air. Lucas followed, holding something in his palm. Here, he said, pressing the keys into my hand. I recognized the emblem instantly. The car? He nodded. It was never mine, not really. I just held it for you until you were ready. I stared at the keys. They were warm from his grip. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Then don't, he replied. Just drive. That night I sat behind the wheel of the silver sedan, my hands on the steering wheel, engine humming beneath me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time, something belonged to me that wasn't earned through suffering. It was quiet ownership, a gift I gave myself. My phone buzzed, an email. Subject line. TED Global Invitation, Speaker Inquiry. I exhaled. The fan above me spun slowly, as if even the air was waiting. The red circle on the TED stage looked smaller in real life than it did on the screen. The lights weren't blinding. They were soft, almost forgiving. The silence before I spoke felt like an inhale from the entire room, waiting to exhale through me. I had practiced the speech at least 30 times, memorized every word. But when I stepped into the center of that circle, I let the script fall away. I had something else to say. I didn't get a standing ovation at my graduation, I began, voice steady. I didn't get flowers, or a hug, or a... We're proud of you. My brother got a car, and I got silence." The crowd leaned in. Even through the lights, I could see heads tilt slightly forward, listening. "But I'm not here to tell you I'm angry. I'm here to tell you that I survived it, that I built something from that silence, that they could give him a car, but I could still learn to drive my own life." Laughter, soft but real. I used to think I needed their applause to matter. Now I know. I needed my own permission. When the talk ended, the claps weren't deafening, but they were honest, warm, whole. No one stood up. No one needed to. I wasn't performing anymore. I was revealing. As I walked off stage, I glanced out at the crowd and saw him, back row, alone, head bowed, hands clasped, my father. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just sat there, listening. Maybe for the first time. I didn't approach him. Not that day. Some truths don't need confrontation. They just need acknowledgement. In the weeks that followed, my inbox filled with messages. From strangers, from students, from therapists, from mothers, from the other children. My story had cracked something open. I began traveling to colleges, small-town community centers, shelters. I met with young women and men who sat in folding chairs, clutching notebooks, eyes wide and uncertain. I told them what I wished someone had told me at 16. You are not invisible. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are not broken for needing love you didn't get. You are not too much. You are enough. One afternoon, I returned to my old university, the same campus where I'd once stood on stage, invisible in my own celebration. I wandered the halls, passing bulletin boards plastered with internship flyers and study groups. The gymnasium was empty. I walked to the very chair I'd sat in during graduation. Faded now, scratched, but still there, still solid. I pulled out a marker and knelt, on the bottom of the seat, where no one would see unless they looked closely. I wrote, "You are enough." And for the first time, I believed it without flinching. That evening, back in my apartment, I received an email. The subject line read, "Your story needs to be a book." A publishing house had listened to my TED Talk and wanted to discuss a memoir. I stared at the screen, heart stuttering. All those words I had once hidden in boxes, all those letters never sent. Someone wanted them. Not for validation, for value. I said yes. The manuscript took 6 months. It was exhausting and liberating. Each chapter peeled back something raw, and I let it bleed until the page stopped needing more. When it was done, I titled it, "The Other Child," a memoir of being seen. With the advance from the book deal, I started a scholarship fund, the Ignored One Fund, designed for students who had faced emotional neglect, favoritism, or lacked family support. The application didn't ask for grades. It asked, "Tell us your story." The first event was small, 20 recipients, local press, and folding chairs again. Lucas showed up in a collared shirt, sleeves rolled, parking cars in the muddy lot. He didn't speak on stage. He didn't need to. At the end of the day, as I gathered my notes, he walked over and handed me a coffee. "No one stalled," he said with a smirk. "I take that as a win. Thanks for helping," I replied. "You're the one driving now," he said. "I'm just following the signs." We laughed, soft and knowing. A month later, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address. It was from my mother. "I watched your talk 3 times before I could breathe during it. I used to think parenting meant choosing the stronger child to carry the burden. I didn't know I had turned you into the ground beneath our feet. If you'll have me, I'd like to come with you. Not as your mother, but as a woman who's learning too. Attached was a printed itinerary for a speaking tour. My mother had booked herself a seat next to mine. The ticket was open-ended. At the first joint event, she stood beside me, not behind, not ahead, and said, I didn't raise her voice, but I'm here now to support it. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase what came before, but it mattered. After the final applause backstage, she reached for my hand. Thank you for letting me in, she said. I squeezed back. Thank you for trying. Outside, people waited for photos, autographs, conversations. But in that moment, I turned inward, toward the girl who once sat at a dinner table filled with silence and asked herself if she mattered. She did. She does. And now, she tells others they do too. My family didn't become perfect. There were still moments when my mother forgot how to apologize without a nervous laugh, or when my father avoided eye contact during difficult conversations. Lucas still stumbled to find the right words, his affection showing up more in actions than sentences. But something had shifted, a softness, a patience. They no longer filled silences with noise. They began to let those silences hold space. We started meeting monthly. No agendas, no special occasions, just dinner. Sometimes the food was bland, sometimes the air was awkward. But always, there was a seat for me, a real one. It took time, and forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a muscle I had to stretch over and over, some days easier than others. One evening, I sat down to record the final episode of my podcast. I spoke slowly, my voice steady, low. This is the last chapter, for now. I started this show thinking I was screaming into the void, but it turns out the void is filled with people. People who hurt, who survived, who found their own way through the quiet. If you're listening right now and you're still waiting for someone to clap for you, stop. You don't need it. No one owes you recognition, but you owe yourself a life that feels like yours. I paused, took a breath. I wasn't the chosen child, but I've learned how to choose myself. The episode went live. I closed the laptop, and for once I didn't refresh the stats. The next morning I took a drive, alone. The beach was half empty, late season cloudy sky. I kicked off my shoes and walked along the shore, letting the cold water kiss my ankles. The wind wasn't loud. It just whispered. For the first time, I wasn't running away or toward anything. I was simply still. A girl no older than 16 sat on the rocks ahead. She had headphones in and a backpack half unzipped beside her. As I passed, she looked up. "You're her," she said. "From the podcast." I smiled, unsure how to respond. She stood, walked toward me. "I just wanted to say, I'm the one they didn't choose. But after listening to you, I realized I can choose myself." My throat tightened. I nodded, unable to find words that would match the weight of what she had given me. "Thanks," she said, and then walked away, her shoulders a little straighter than before. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through emails. One caught my eye. A press invite. "You've been nominated for the Voice of the Voiceless Award." I stared at the screen, that familiar pull in my chest. Half disbelief, half peace. I accepted. At the award ceremony, I wore a simple black dress, no notes in hand, no family in the audience. By design. This was for the girl who once stood alone holding her diploma like a consolation prize. On stage, I took the microphone. "I'm not here to talk about a car," I said, and the audience chuckled softly. In fact, at every event, I asked them not to bring it up, because this was never about the car. It was about what we think love should look like, and how we learn to rebuild when it doesn't look that way. I didn't stay long at the after-party. Instead, I drove. The same silver sedan Lucas had once been gifted. I had kept it. Not for its value, but for its transformation. I pulled into the parking lot of my old school, late at night. Empty. I opened the back door and waited. It wasn't literal. There were no kids getting in. But in my mind, I saw them. The quiet ones, the overachievers with hollow hearts, the easy children, the invisible ones. I saw them all, and I whispered, "Come on in. It's your turn now." I shut the door, put the car in drive, because legacy isn't always loud. It isn't always a headline or a medal. Sometimes it's a seat held open, a story passed on, a silence broken, and a road that waited, patiently, for you to be ready to walk it. Not because they applauded, but because you chose to go anyway.